Hey guys, so I was trying to find a good video for neurotransmitters, but they were either way too complicated because it would be for people studying to become a doctor, or they were just way too simple. So I decided to just walk through this link. I'll put the link on Canvas, so if you wanted to follow along, great. But I'm just gonna highlight and pick out some key things. So one, where the neurotransmitter starts, it's gonna leave the synapse. So if you remember, we have the terminal button, you have little vesicles, and there's the neurotransmitters inside. So they're like little dots in here. When there's an action potential, it's going to indicate to the neurotransmitter it's time to leave. And those cute little neurotransmitters will leave across the synapse and they'll make their way over to the new dendrite. So that is where all this action is happening, and we're focusing on these chemical messengers right here because they are different. So let's get rid of all of this and we'll keep moving down. Okay, so this is just describing that whole process. That's what I just said, but I wanted to focus on the neurotransmitters themselves for this video. So over here, it's going to indicate the key neurotransmitters that are commonly used. And the first one that I'll talk about is acetylcholine. So this neurotransmitter, it is something that will excite your nervous system to move your muscles. So anytime that you move your hand when you're writing, if you move your head, turning left to right, you're using acetylcholine. So those neurons in your brain, they're letting your motor cortex know, like, hey, I hear a sound, let's move our head to this direction. So its key function is for muscle contraction and certain hormones. So these hormones, it can cause things such as attentiveness, sexuality, aggression, thirst, all this other stuff. Also, this neurotransmitter, it is associated with learning. So this plus learning. And that is why if you do not have enough acetylcholine, then Alzheimer's can happen. So Alzheimer's is from the lack of acetylcholine going to different regions of the brain. So for example, if someone is having difficulty remembering maybe the street they grew up on, perhaps there is not acetylcholine activating parts of the hippocampus. So that way you can remember it. So that's acetylcholine. That's one of the big ones. The next one is dopamine. And dopamine is another one that can control movement and posture, and also, with mood. And I would also add that for people that have ADHD, you don't have enough dopamine. So this is also associated with ADHD. People that do not have enough dopamine typically end up with ADHD. When you have a loss of dopamine, it can also cause muscle rigidity and Parkinson's disease. So that's disease where you have someone, maybe they're trying to write and they have a shaky hand and they can't really control their hand movement. So that's dopamine. The next one is GABA, gamma aminobutyric acid. That's pretty wordy to say, so we can stick to saying GABA. And this one is an inhibitory neurotransmitter, so that means it's going to stop an action. So with GABA, it'll still do muscle movement, motor control, and it also regulates anxiety. So GABA is pretty much used to stop epilepsy and people like trembling. So GABA, again, it's inhibitory. So it's going to try to stop movement and stop things from firing. So in someone who has epilepsy, like myself, here's a picture of the brain. When you have a seizure, you have all of your neurons firing at once, and it's overwhelming, and your brain doesn't know what to do, so it shuts down. It's kind of like an electric shock. So GABA tries to stop these action potentials from happening, so that way you don't get a seizure. Goodbye, brain. Goodbye, GABA. The next one, this is glutamate. And as you can see, a lot of these have to do with either moving or memory. So glutamate is associated with learning, and it's also thought to be associated with Alzheimer's. So with glutamate, I'm pretty sure another thing that could be added here is you can also get glutamate in your food. So MSG, you've heard of things that had MSG in your food. Normally it's items that have a lot of salt. So soy sauce is in chips, but that stands for monosodium glutamate. And if you have way too much glutamate in your system, it can overexcite your brain, causing you to potentially have a seizure. But so far it's been associated with memory and malfunctions. Raising this. The last two are ones that people have probably heard a lot about. The first is norepinephrine. So I know that looks like norepinephrine, but it's norepinephrine. And this is a thing that will deal with your attentiveness, sleeping. People might think of this as like adrenaline. So it's released as a hormone into the blood where it causes vessels to contract and increases heart rate. So if you have way too much norepinephrine, so it plays a role in manic depression and mood disorders. So for example, let's say you're chilling and then you have norepinephrine, might cause a spike in your behavior. And if you don't have enough, it'll cause a decrease in your behavior. You're just on this giant up and down loop-de-loop. So that's norepinephrine. The last one, so I'm getting rid of this crazy chart, is serotonin. And most people have associated this one already with kind of like your mood. So serotonin is responsible for body temperature, sleep, mood, appetite, pain. And people that don't have a good balance of serotonin, this can lead to depression, suicide, impulsiveness, aggression, and this all involves an imbalance of serotonin. So if there's anything going on with mood, it's typically because of serotonin has something to deal with it. So with serotonin itself, I'm just going to go up back to that synapse for some people who want to go the extra mile and know what serotonin does on a chemical level. If not, you can tune out, finish your notes. But serotonin, I'm going to scroll back up. We're moving. So I'm going to pretend that this section is going over serotonin. So what the medication does, if you're taking like antidepressants, it will actually block the serotonin for a while to hook up to the next dendrite, and it will leave the serotonin floating in your brain. So that way you feel happier. So it blocks, the medicine will block it from connecting to the next dendrite, have the serotonin linger here for a while. And that's how antidepressive, some of them, work. So that's a quick overview of neurotransmitters. Make sure you get those notes done, and I'm hoping that this was somewhat helpful. Okay, peace out.